Back to these massive fires in Los Angeles. They're still burning, and they're not just a tragedy, they're not just an economic disaster, they are also destroying the woke movement and changing America's political culture. Now, the excuse that these fires were caused by global warming isn't washing. The worst of the fires seems actually to have been started by humans in a hiking zone that was popular with the young. And as I showed last night, other parts of California are actually getting more rain than usual. And studies say that the Santa Ana winds from inland that are whipping along these fires would actually be tempered by global warming, not made horrifically worse. Now, this is a story of colossal mismanagement by very woke politicians. Fire hydrants didn't have water. One crucial dam had been drained. The budget for the City Fire Brigade had been cut by the Mayor, Karen Bass. Meanwhile, spending on diversity policies went up. The wokeness in California is incredible. The Democrat governor of the state, Gavin Newsom, touted before the election, we're going to promise to spend millions to supposedly Trump-proof California, protect it from that wicked Donald Trump, when instead he should have fireproofed his state, but he slashed the spending that would have done it. And he scrapped dams in order to save fish. Joining me is Sean Spicer, the first White House spokesman of the now re-elected Donald Trump. Sean Spicer, great to see you again for another year of commentary from you. Lucky to have you. At least 24 people dead in these fires, 12,000 homes and other buildings destroyed. I mean, it's an absolute catastrophe. But I wonder what the political impact now is of these fires.
It's a really good question, Andrew, because in all my years in politics, which you're not going to believe is just over 30 now, I have never seen so many people on the left speak so critically of their elected officials, whether it's Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, who was out of the country on another taxpayer-financed junket, or Gavin Newsom, who bumbled his way through the first iterations of this disaster. I have been shocked by some of the response of the Hollywood left elite and others who finally are recognizing the sheer incompetence of these folks. And it was interesting. We had, I host a YouTube show in the morning on my channel. We had the owner of the Los Angeles Times on this morning. And he came on and said, we made a mistake when it came to endorsing Karen Bass. She's not competent. And I think that, I don't know that there's that much hope for Republicans yet, but I do think that there's a renewed sense of looking at a degree of competence for the jobs that people are being elected to. When Karen Bass ran for mayor of Los Angeles, she talked about her race. She talked about, inclusion. She didn't talk about competence in running a city, and we're seeing the consequences of that now.
Well, that's a very good point. I did tune into that interview. I want to show people the bit about exactly that, where here we have one of America, the owner of one of America's biggest newspapers, famously left-wing, now saying he got it wrong by backing Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. And it is time, as you say, to judge politicians by their competence, not their politics or identity. I'm playing this because I think this is a message for Australia as well. Here it is.
We endorse Karen Bass. I think right now in front, that's a mistake. I think we were one of the few to say competence matters. We've got like maybe 20, 23 million views to show how that was really dear to the heart of most people, whether you're right or left. And it's an interesting thing is that maybe we should think about how we elect people on the basis of, did they actually run a job? Did they actually make a payroll? Do they understand what it is? And rather than having professional politicians whose only job is really to run for office.
Sean, I mean, it's a pretty obvious message. Choose people who are competent, but America's got, taken its eye off that ball. How's that message now of choosing competence over politics resonating?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, Andrew. How long does it last? Do these folks in California recognize that they just elected a mayor that didn't think about checking on, things like fire hydrants having water in them, the reservoir being full, the ability to clear brush. Because, I mean, let's face it, as tragic as this was, it was predictable. And the problem is that the folks in California have rarely had to see this level of incompetence up close. It's simmered below the surface before. But I think maybe this time there will be a clarion call throughout California and hopefully throughout some other left-leaning cities that say maybe we should actually ask the person who's running us about whether or not they've held a job, run a payroll, they run a business, they have a degree of competency or run an organization. But too often those questions have eluded folks on the left when they run for office. So it's unfortunate that we're talking about the politics and the policies. But when you think about the consequences of this, the homes that are being lost, the tragedy that so many people's lives are enduring now.
And the thing is, we're not being wise after the event. Here's something I'm going to explore because, again, it's got a resonance in Australia. It's got a lesson for Australia that I'll discuss later in the show. Donald Trump warned last year, in fact, he warned years ago as well, but last year specifically about the mismanagement of California's forests, the lack of raking or fuel reduction. Here he is with Joe Rogan.
They're not allowed to rake their forests because you're not allowed to touch it. When a tree falls down, after 18 months, it becomes very dry. It's like, like real firewood, it's bad. But when they fall, right, they're like, it's like lighting a match. All they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it up, get rid of the leaves, get rid of, leaves that are sitting there for 5 years. And
we'll certainly get rid of the deadfall.
And get rid of the trees that are fallen.
So what's Trump saying now? How's this playing out with him?
Well, I think, Trump, like a lot of other people, as I mentioned earlier, predicted this because when you have policies that don't allow you to prevent a predictable tragedy, there's a degree of accountability that needs to be held, come out. And I think right now you're seeing that where Trump and others are saying, listen, we want to help our fellow citizens that have dealt with the consequences of this horrible tragedy and these policies. But to some extent, there's a degree of accountability. Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, and others need to be held accountable. They can't just walk away from this. And I think that Trump and others, Joe Rogan also talked about this and others about the policies that prevented California from mitigating the extent to which this fire spread. Right? You're not allowed to clean the forest. There was a lot of brush. But when you look at a lot of the places that have sustained themselves throughout these fires, including the Reagan Library, it's because they took active steps to make sure that they mitigated any type of fire spread that would have occurred. So, I just think as tragic as this is, but we also can't just brush this under the rug and allow it to happen again.
No, because that's the thing. You're talking about future events as well. Preventing future tragedies. Sean Spicer, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Good to have you back, Andrew. Looking forward to a really fun 2025.